Wild win for the Cowboys. And we sit here all the time and we try and figure out what the takeaways are. Yeah, Caroline, I'm going to start with the positive because we can sit here and we can talk all day long about what's wrong with the Cowboys defense. There's time for that. Today, I'm feeling positive as we start this show. Dak Prescott, elite. I'm just saying, Dak balled out in this game. 40-37 is your overtime win for the Cowboys. And Dak reminded all of us that when he's cooking, good God, it's hard to stop this offense.
Yeah, Dak Prescott looked great. And I feel like for some reason, Dak Prescott doesn't really get the credit that he deserves. Does he belong in the same tier as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes? No, of course not. And I don't think that anybody is trying to argue that. But I think that Dak Prescott is much better than we give him credit for. He does have a little bit of that kind of clutch gene. And we saw that really at the end of that game. And I think that we should give Dak Prescott, the credit that he deserves. When he's healthy, he can look like one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League. When he's healthy, he can will his team to victory. And Dak Prescott doesn't make some of the, back-breaking mistakes that we might see from other quarterbacks out of that elite tier. So I do appreciate that we are giving Dak Prescott probably the love that he has deserved. But Fitz, it's a Monday, I'm wearing black. Like it's overcast here in Charlotte. Like maybe I'm not feeling as positive as you are, because as excited and optimistic as Cowboys fans should feel about what we saw from the offense, really in the last three of the four quarters of that game last night and going into overtime, that offense can make anyone feel optimistic that the Cowboys are absolutely a playoff team. But I'll look at the glass half empty, which I don't like to do, but the Cowboys defense is going to make me have to do it. Because as good as the offense looked, my goodness, the defense might be the reason why the Cowboys missed the playoffs altogether. You give up over 500 yards of offense to the Giants? I'm sorry, no disrespect to the Giants. But when we're talking about offensive juggernauts in the National Football League, where do the Giants rank on that list? Not top 15, probably. That Russell Wilson had statistically the best game of his career, 450 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Yes, he had the death pick in overtime, which you can't do that. But 450 yards, 30 of 41, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Best game of Russell Wilson's career. We're talking about a man who won a Super Bowl. We are talking about a man that is very much so in the twilight of his career. We are talking about a man who the best of his football is behind him, and he had the best day of his career against that Cowboys defense. Like, that would concern me a whole heck of a lot, Fitz. That Dallas can put up, 40 points a game, but if they're consistently giving up 500 yards and 30 plus points every, any given Sunday, any given week, that defense is not something that I would feel overly confident in. And I know that Deron Bland was out. I do understand that. We do need to acknowledge that Deron Bland was out, but that Cowboys secondary looked awful. Absolutely awful. Even Wan'Dale Robinson was cooking that Cowboys secondary. So maybe we should give Deron Bland more credit than we're giving him. But that Cowboys defense stinks.
I don't disagree with that. And by the way, I had one former player tell me last night, the most staggering part about the game plan was that the Cowboys were in the right defense. We talk about coaching all the time. The Cowboys were in the appropriate defense to try and stop long moon ball passing to Malik Neighbors. And despite that fact, the Giants were out here playing like it was Madden. Like, this was truly a Madden game. Nobody was playing any defense. It was just heave the ball downfield. You are right. The Cowboys defense is a problem, and not in a good way. And Russ absolutely cooked, because all he had to do was get back there and just heave the ball as far down the field as he possibly could over and over and over again. And it worked. I cannot believe, especially in the last couple of minutes of the game, like how you let Malik Neighbors get that open. And then, frankly, should have been defensive pass interference on that touchdown that he scored on. Like, amazing that he was still able to do what he did in the last couple of minutes of the game, because the offense was very clear. Heave it and hope, right? But it worked for the Giants over and over and over again. So you're right. The Cowboys defense is a problem. I just think when we look at the positives from the game from the Cowboys versus the negatives, I walked into it saying, hey, the calling card of the New York Giants is their defense. The calling card of what they're capable of doing is that they can get after you on the defensive side of the ball. That defense, which I think has a chance to be special. Again, we're only 2 weeks into the season, but 2 weeks ago, my thought was that the Giants had the chance to have one of the best defenses in the league. I just watched
Mhm.
Cowboys put up 40 on them. So you're right,
Yeah.
the Cowboys defense is a problem, but if your offense can cook like that against that defense, like let's be real here. The Cowboys are a couple of drop CD Lamb passes away from being 2-0 with 2 wins in their own division. I realize they're 1-1, but like at some point, what we're seeing, if you just take all of the body of work so far, is that this Cowboys team is far more, I think, explosive. It's far more, I don't even want to say competitive. This Cowboys team's a hell of a lot closer to elite than anybody was giving it credit for. Now, yes, their defense stinks, but their offense is absolutely working it out. I'm going to trust that over the course of the season, they figure some of this defensive stuff out. I'm going to trust that Malik Neighbors is just a matchup nightmare for him. And I'm just stepping back and I'm saying, hey, for all the people that thought the minute that Micah was traded, the Cowboys were just going to suck and be a top 10 pick in the draft, this team looks a hell of a lot closer to being in the playoffs than they do to being a top 10 pick.
And to your point, yes, Malik Neighbors is a matchup nightmare, especially for a shorthanded secondary. I think Malik Neighbors is going to be a matchup nightmare for really a majority of secondaries in the National Football League. But it wasn't just Malik Neighbors. Like, I'll go back to that second to last touchdown drive in regulation. It was a 32-yard touchdown pass to Wan'Dale Robinson, and he was wide open, and he was about 2 to 3 strides ahead of the nearest defender, closest to him. So I do have to question that a little bit. It's not just Malik Neighbors. Look, Malik Neighbors had a heck of a game. It was really that entire Giants receiving core, and it felt like watching that game that it was Russell Wilson, like, F it, someone's down there. It's not just F it, Malik Neighbors is out there somewhere. It's F it, someone is down there and someone is going to get open. But you do make a very fair point, because we talked about the Giants defense a whole heck of a lot in the preseason. We talked about the Giants defense having the ability to be able to keep them in games. And maybe, just maybe, if the Giants can keep these games low scoring, they can figure out a way to win. That's not a low scoring game, a 40-37 game. So Russ, in the game of his career, the game of his life, the Giants putting up 500 yards of offense. Like that, and putting up 37 points. If you put up 500 yards and 37 points in the National Football League, you should win, especially with the amount the Giants have invested defensively. Obviously, they didn't. Obviously, that's not the story that we're talking about today. So, who do we blame for this loss? Because on paper, the Giants should win this game. So who do we blame? If there's a blame pie
Russ.
for the Giants
we
now
blame Russ.
sitting at 0-2.
We blame Russ. Like, I get it.
The same
like,
man that kept
be in
that
situation. They wouldn't be in the situation if it wasn't for Russ, who had a killer game. And man, Russ was playing in a way that I was literally laughing out loud with joy, because I was like, this is incredible to watch as somebody with no skin in the game. I was laughing. And then when he threw the pick, I laughed out loud again. It's like, Russ give it, then Russ take it away. Like, that overtime throw is just such an inexcusable throw for a quarterback that's played 8,752 years of football. Like, Russ is not a first – like, if you just want a stupid interception in overtime, you can get that from anybody, right? Like, Russ it just had to do better, be better. I don't even know what the hell he was going for on that throw. So, unfortunately, I mean, look, yeah, there's plenty of blame to go around on the fact that nobody can figure out how to stop George Pickens, who, by the way, looks like he's just going to be a monster in this Cowboys offense. And the Giants had nothing to stop and slow down Russ, which is inexcusable. But if you're looking at it across the board at where the blame falls, you throw an interception like that in the middle of the field when you're going against a kicker that can make it from basically anywhere. I'm sorry. One play doesn't decide a game until it does, and Russ made the bad play.
It is kind of the Russell Wilson experience. He giveth, he taketh away. At least, in this game, he giveth more than he tooketh away. He's been taketh away a whole heck of a lot more than he's been giveth in recent years. And I know that was perfect English and perfect grammar that I just gave you there. But yeah, thank you. The same man that got you in that situation is the one that threw the absolute back-breaking death pick when you absolutely positively cannot do it, and when your defense has not been able to stop the Cowboys all game long. And I guess I could excuse a young quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback, a rookie quarterback, and a gotta-have-it moment. Maybe your butt just gets a little bit too tight and you throw a ball that you want to have back and that you regret. I have to blame a veteran in this league who you just said has played 17 billion business days in the National Football League, cannot make a throw like that, cannot make a mistake like that. I also think, in a loss, blame goes to more than just one person, just like in a win, credit goes to more than just one person. How much of the blame pie are we giving to Brian Dable for getting kind of cute and putting Jackson Dart in some of those short yardage situations? Like, you have Russ that is absolutely going off. He is on a heater, and you take him out to put your rookie quarterback in for what? Like, to be cute? To satisfy the cries and the requests from the fan base that have been, absolutely pining for Jackson Dart? Why put him in those situations? You have to have a good feel for the game. I understand if Brian Dable, and part of his game plan was, we want to put Jackson Dart in some of these situations where we feel like he can execute these short yardage situations, start getting him some live game reps. But you have to adjust at some point. And when Russ is going off the way that he was going off in that game, you take him off the field. I didn't understand that, Fitzy.
I laughed at a friend of mine that's a Giants fan that said, "Oh, you can see it in Dable's eyes, the way he looks at Jackson Dart. It's just he gets so happy every time he talks about him. You can
He
see it on the
loves him.
sidelines." He had this like whole theory a few days ago about Brian Dable just won't be able to help himself. He loves Jackson Dart, and I laughed at the time until we got into the game, and I was like, maybe he's onto something, because it just felt like one of those moments where Dable couldn't help himself. He's just turning around. He's like, "Oh, I gotta put the kid in. I love the way he plays. I gotta put the kid in." And you're right. I thought it was unnecessary, and I thought it was being cute where you don't have to be cute. That's the hard part of any sort of creativity on offense, is that when it works, we all turn around and say, "Oh my God, what a brilliant idea." When it doesn't work, we sit there and say, "What in the hell are you doing?" But when your quarterback is having a career, when your quarterback, that you said earlier very accurately and importantly here, has won a Super Bowl and he's having a career day, maybe you don't put the rookie in right then. I think that's a fair point. Can I be poly positive again? Can I just take this all
Please,
to it? Giants fans, you need to hear this.
by all means.
I feel you, Giants fans. You're 0-2 and you want to give up. You're the best 0-2 team in the league. I know that doesn't comfort anybody, and this is
In the
what Chiefs
league?
fans will say. Yeah, in the league. There's no doubt. Like, look, I'm talking about who the Chiefs were and who we think the Chiefs will be. I think by the end of the year, the Chiefs are going to be just fine. It's okay, but football conscious needs to hear this. It's okay to admit that the Chiefs have sucked the first 2 weeks of the season. It's okay to admit that. I still think they're going to go to the playoffs. They'll be fine. I think it's also okay to look at it and say, you know what? The Giants have had a couple of games that have been losses for them. Yeah, but they played far better in those losses than we expected. I look at this and say the Giants, as if I were a Giants fan today, I'm saying, man, we're 1 or 2 plays away. We're 1 or 2 plays away. This thing could absolutely turn around. I'm not total disaster for the Giants, the best 0-2 team in the league.
It's absolutely not disaster for the Giants, but I cannot go as far as to say that the Giants are a better football team than the Kansas City Chiefs. I can't. And that's what you're saying right there. I think that the Chiefs look, maybe this is all bias, and maybe this is all benefit of the doubt of Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, but haven't they earned that? Like, hasn't Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs earned a little bit of the benefit of the doubt? The fact that they do this very frequently, and they do this a lot over the last couple of years, that they play with their food, that they lose a couple of games that they weren't supposed to lose. And I know that the Chiefs last year were experts in closing out one-score games. They were, 15-1 in one-score games last year. Now they're 0-2 in one-score games in just 2 weeks of the season. That Patrick Mahomes, going back to the Super Bowl, has lost 3 consecutive games for the first time in his career. Like, I understand it feels a little bit different maybe than Chiefs teams have passed, but it's still the Chiefs. It's still Patrick Mahomes. I will say, if I want to be poly positive here, because I don't want to be negative, that's not me. The Giants are the best 0-2 team in the NFC. They're better than Panthers. They're better than the Saints. They're better than those teams. And I know that's a kind of a low bar. They have looked significantly better than those two teams. I just can't say that they're better than the Chiefs, knowing what we know about the Chiefs. But I do feel really good about the New York Giants and what they have done in 2 losses. I don't think that result should be, the end-all be-all of everything. That process is also incredibly important. And the Giants' process, at least so far, and at least what we saw yesterday, yes, it was a heartbreaking loss. Yes, you hate to see a divisional game that you had in your hands just, fall away from you. But I think that at least what you've seen, you can be encouraged